Hey, what's up everybody? This is Katicus. Today I want to do a video addressing the common term that is gas and why gas is not an illness. This is just my point of view, but I wanted to give a little bit of counter to a lot of the sentiment with YouTubers and gear enthusiasts, which is that gas is some sort of bad thing. If for those of you who don't know what gas is, it's gear acquisition syndrome. If I just said that, I'm having mental issues. Anyhow, basically there's this idea that getting new gear is a bad thing. Like there's something wrong with just constantly getting more gear. And I can understand if somebody is taking, like, remortgaging their home or something in order to get more gear, that would be definitely a bad thing. But if somebody's spending within their limits, that they're still taking care of their bills and stuff and they just keep getting more gear, it really depends on what one's expectations are for those buying habits. I mean, if you think that getting more gear is going to make you a better artist, I can tell you right now that even with a lot of gear, it's not really going to make you a better artist. I mean, one of the points that I saw in a video by Liam something, I'll figure out what it is and put a link to it up here, it'll show up somewhere in the corner. And that is that buying DAWless or buying each piece of gear that you get is a learning experience. There is a huge learning curve. Some of it is, if you understand synthesis at all, like you're talking about a synthesizer, not a groove box, but if you're talking about a synthesizer, some of it's like quite straightforward. Look at this beast right here. That's the Moog Voyager XL, and even though it's huge and intimidating looking, if you understand synthesis, it's really straightforward and easy to learn. I mean, the mod matrix is literally just patch bays. And everything else is knob per function with a slight bit of stuff in the menus, like on the screen here, but very minimal, like, you know, saving a patch and renaming it and stuff like that. Excuse my hand. So getting new gear often, you know, when you've got something like the Iridium down there, it's a lot more complex, which means that the learning curve for it, sorry, I'm switching hands back and forth because my arm is getting tired. The learning curve for it is a lot bigger. It is not so hard to understand. I don't have the manual. I bought it secondhand, but there are tons of videos that you can watch about pretty much any synthesizer that's available. Tutorials on how to do different things with them and stuff like that. And if you have, again, a basic understanding of synthesis, then when it comes to physical synthesizers, hardware synthesizers, a lot of it is pretty straightforward. You'll understand how to use them if you understand envelopes and VCAs and, you know, basically just understanding how to use a synthesizer. That'll mean that you have an edge on that. But there are, again, a lot of different synthesizers that have a lot more features. They might have effects, they might have a gigantic mod matrix with plenty of different ways to further alter the sound. And so each piece or new piece of gear is definitely something that you have to learn. In order to use it really well, you need to learn it, and that can take hours. So it is a time investment. But on the other hand, why is that a bad thing? For me, for example, I get gear. I don't expect it to make me a better artist. It doesn't. I'm still pretty much the same artist. I fall into the same patterns that I was in before of making music the same way, with the same workflow. I have an MPC Live at the center of my setup that does all the arranging and does all the MIDI work between, like, communication between synths and stuff like that. So aside from creating new sounds on the gear itself, everything else falls into the MPC Workflow. Most DAWless setups will have some kind of brain controlling everything else, whether it be a MIDI sequencer or it be an iPad with USB out into something that has USB MIDI or whatever. Most DAWless has some kind of brain, unless you're really good at timing your arpeggiators and stuff like that on your different hardware synthesizers. You're using something in the middle of it. So a lot of this stuff is falling into what I basically call a DAW in a box as the central brain for it. And that workflow, whether it be machine, whether it be a Kai, the MPC One, or the Live, or whatever, you're often, each new piece of gear that you get on top of that, if it's a synthesizer or like a drum machine or something, it's going to be controlled by that. So it's going to fall into your already existing workflow habits, which means that that new piece of gear that you're getting is more so about oftentimes, if it's a synthesizer, it's about the sound that it can create. But that's another thing you got to think about, or something that I was thinking about, and maybe it's obvious to everybody else. But when you see videos for a new synthesizer, for example, the Oberheim OBX8, I want one so bad. It's such a beautiful synthesizer. Every time I see a demo for it on YouTube, I'm just blown away by how delicious the sound is. It's just, oh my God. But you know what? Those are carefully curated or carefully created patches made often by people who want to sell their patches so you can pay for it, download it, and put it onto your synthesizer, and you have all their patches. And they do sound gorgeous, and that synthesizer can sound beautiful, but it can also sound ugly if you don't know what you're doing, or if you don't take enough time to really put into making ear-pleasing sounds. Those are often carefully curated presets that are intentionally made not so much for using them in tracks and whatnot, but for pleasing the ear, for making the synth itself sound really good, or for selling preset packs. When it comes to actually owning the synth, it can be very hard to make sounds that are that beautiful. Or if not even hard, it's the fact that when you're making your own sounds, you don't always want those ones. And if you're creating your own, you might make ones that if you put them into a YouTube video, nobody would think that it's a good sounding synthesizer. But to you, it sounds good. So when you're watching those videos, be forewarned, a lot of them are trying to showcase, for those reasons, beautiful, beautiful ear candy. So they may not be representative of the way that the synthesizer will sound when it arrives to you, especially if you're listening to videos where somebody is selling a preset pack. My arm is getting tired again. Oh my gosh. If you're buying a preset pack that somebody created and they're showing it on YouTube, you will not hear those sounds from your synthesizer. You might hear similar things, but you're not going to hear those presets because that's something you have to download. And the presets that come on some of these beautiful synths, for example, I saw a video from Oberheim themselves showcasing the presets that come with the Oberheim X8. And you know what? I'm quite frankly underwhelmed by those sounds. A lot of those sounds, in my opinion, don't sound very beautiful. But there's a reason for that, and that is that Oberheim doesn't make all those presets to show how beautiful and luscious the Oberheim X8 is all the time. They make a wide and vast range or array of sounds to showcase just what the Oberheim can do, because not everybody wants fat pads from a synthesizer that costs $5,000. Professionals want a synthesizer that can create a vast range of sound. So presets that come with the synthesizer are often shrill or tinny or yucky or not pleasing at all, but they are, a wide range, which means you're going to find a few presets that sound really good and a lot of presets that you won't like. So that is something to consider when you get a hardware synthesizer. If you're not comfortable with making your own sounds, then you could always buy preset packs that you see showcased on YouTube, or you can watch a lot of YouTube videos and learn how to use learn synthesis. You don't have to learn about a specific synth, but learn about envelopes and attack, delay, sustain, or attack, decay, sustain, and release. Learn about these things. Learn about mod matrices and stuff. and that'll make you a better sound producer, in which case one of these synthesizers is really good. But what it really falls down to is that if you're going to get into hardware synthesis, there are some bonuses. One of them is you don't have to sit at a computer. I mean, especially if you work at a computer job and you go home and you sit down at a computer, you might not feel inspired. If you're like me and a Discord notification pops up, you just got to look at it and it takes you out of it and you're no longer in the flow. Or if you're also like me and you're using something like Piano Roll and you have to click on a specific box and you click on the wrong one and then you delete it and you click on the wrong one again and then you delete it and you click on the wrong one again and you're like, you know what? I don't want to make music anymore. Honestly, my emotions are very temperamental and that happens a lot to me. So DAWless is a nice alternative to that. It's very tactile, very hands-on. You're turning knobs with your actual fingers and sliders and whatnot, and you're more of a physical input to it and less of a detached by keyboard and mouse. The option, there is an option, you can control a DAW with a Midi controller, and for a lot of people a Midi controller is enough. It does give them that hands-on tactility. What is it? Not Novation, not Akai. Akai makes MIDI controllers. They're all right. Also, Arturia makes some amazing MIDI controllers. So if you just want to get hands-on, but you also want to use a DAW and you don't want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to have a physical music-making experience, an Arturia KeyStep Pro is like a couple $100, or I don't know the exact price, but it's not in the thousands, absolutely not in the thousands. And you can get that experience, and that's pretty much all a lot of people need, and they can continue buying VSTs. But if you're like me, you might be buying gear because, like a little kid who wants to constantly get new toys to play with. You grow up, you become an adult, and action figures no longer do that for you. And, you like music production, or you like music and sound, or sonic exploration, just creating sounds out of nothing. It's not a terrible idea. I also really like groove boxes. It is not essential. There's no need to have many, many groove boxes, but each groove box is kind of its own. By the way, if you don't know what a groove box is, that is a machine that you can pretty much create whole songs inside of. You can make the beat and all of the sounds, and you can arrange it into something that would sound like a song. And there are so many groove boxes out there, and groove boxes can be a lot of fun. I really enjoy groove boxes. I love exploring them and figuring out how they work and creating things with them. They can be so much fun, but you're not going to usually see somebody with a DAWless setup where they're running, 4 different groove boxes at the same time, because each one of them is basically a brain for song creation. And you could, assign each groove box to, like, one to a beat and another to adding a little bit of this and the bass line and another one to do this. You could do that. You could definitely have a multi-groove box arrangement. If they're all MIDI synced and they're working together, they can sound great. But generally speaking, you only need one. If you get more, it's because you want to play with more groove boxes. I love exploring new groove boxes, so getting more of them is not a terrible idea for me, but not essential. I do all of my song making on my MPC Live. Of course, I use all hardware synthesizers going into the MPC Live to create arrangements and do recording of those, fresh and generated real-time sounds. And I really own all of the synthesizers I own because I lusted after them and I could see myself playing with them and tinkering with them for hours. And honestly, I hardly ever make music anymore. Hardly ever. But I definitely have a lot of fun exploring sound. Again, sonic exploration. I can sit there for minutes or hours just just playing around with them until I'm content that I've spent time doing something that I love. And I might not record a thing, I might not save a patch, but I definitely had a great time doing that. I no longer feel the need to be a music producer. I no longer feel the need to create songs every time I stand in front of the MPC Live and start playing my synthesizer. I used to feel like that was the end game, that was the reason I was doing it, and it felt like if I didn't do that, I felt almost guilty. Now I don't feel guilty. I mean, we can only do what we do, and we do what we do when we do it, and we might as well just accept that and come to terms with it. But if you can afford DAWless, ignore what people are saying about gear acquisition syndrome and how it's a bad thing. And look at this guy buying and spending all this money buying this synth. Like, if you want to get a synth so that you can boast about it, then get a synth so you can boast about it. If that makes you feel great, then why not feel a little bit of happiness? If you want to get a synthesizer because you want to play with it and make sound and make fart noises, then just do it, because why not? If you can afford it, that's a key thing. Don't go selling essential things or kidneys or anything for, the latest and greatest synthesizer, because that's not going to end well, being unable to drink while you play with your synths because you only have one kidney left. Frankly, don't put yourself in any kind of financial distress getting new gear, and don't make the mistake of selling off old gear in order to get new gear if you are the kind of person that easily feels regret. If you can let go of something with no regrets, go for it. But if you easily feel regret, hold on to the things that you have. You may be happier that you kept it instead of jumping onto the new thing. But otherwise, if you can afford it, if you are good at saving and you don't mind spending $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 on something that you are lusting after, then why the hell not? And there are plenty of options for people who have limited spending budgets, and there are plenty of options for people who have unlimited spending budgets. I mean, the range is insane. You can go from Volca and pocket operators to Oberheim and Moog. I mean, the options exist for all price ranges. So again, don't feel guilt about your gear acquisition syndrome. If you're looking at DAWless and you're thinking, you know what, I'd like to get apart from the computer and start making things, with my hands on and stuff like that, start with a Midi controller and see how it feels using actual knobs and keys and stuff. And if that feels like it's your thing and you want to dive deeper into it, then by all means look at going DAWless. DAWless, again, usually means having some kind of brain. That means some kind of device that can control other devices through MIDI, and it can do some kind of arrangement or recording in order to make actual tracks out of it. So you're going to need to be looking at something like an MPC or a machine, or I'm forgetting, an Octatrack, like anything by the company that makes Octatrack. And for whatever reason during making this video, I cannot remember it. What's wrong with my brain? But you get the idea. You're going to probably need something to control, to be the brain of your DAWless setup. I would recommend something that can make entire tracks on its own, like the Digitact or the MPC One or the MPC Live, or a machine or something like that. Although machine is usually dependent on a computer, but it does at least take your hands away from the computer. But anyway, the point is, if you're going to go DAWless, you're going to want to start with something that can do a lot of the music making on its own. And then also something that will allow you to branch out, meaning plug in through MIDI and use that brain to control the MIDI device, and then also have a way to get the sound from the synthesizer or whatever to go into your brain of your DAWless setup. But don't feel guilt. We live once, and in the meantime, as long as we are safe and financially okay and we can see ourselves till the next month, then there should be no shame in exploring a new hobby. If you've been doing, using a DAW for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or 1 year, and you feel like you would like to turn it into something physical, then there's nothing wrong with exploring the idea of hardware synthesis or groove boxes or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with becoming more and more enthusiastic about it, especially as you engage with the community. You start talking to people in Discord groups. There's WATM, We Are the Music Makers. That's one of the Discords that I'm in. And there's tons of fantastic people to chat with that know a lot about the gear, and they also know a lot about using a DAW or whatever, but they're just great people to engage with about music. But there's a huge community of people who enjoy hardware synthesis and who enjoy groove boxes, and there's a community for everything. And if you feel like that's your groove, then feel no guilt about diving into it. I feel no guilt about it whatsoever. my bills are paid and I have stuff that I can go into my room, my music room, and just play with, and I don't have to make anything. So I just find it so strange that there's such a YouTube, like, I don't know, it's like people need to say this or warn you about this in order to sound like they're professional or legit. And maybe in a music production sense of like actually finishing songs and stuff, yeah, that's quite a legit argument that like buying more gear, again, it's not going to make you a better artist. But it's definitely something that you can have a lot of fun with if that's your goal, if you just want to create sounds and stuff. And if you want to like make music and you're willing to put in, 10 or 20 hours into learning your gear, it really can make your music, it can add something to your music. I'm not going to say make it better, but it can add something to your music. But you had to put the time into learning it. Something I don't usually do. I just noodle around with all my stuff. But, different people have different reasons for buying things. If, again, your reason is to make your music better, it's probably not going to help. If your reason is that it helps you get more emotionally engaged to get a new synthesizer and it keeps you excited and whatnot, then do it. I mean, go for it and feel no guilt about it. As long as ends are like your ends are met, you're making ends meet, then there's nothing to feel shame about. Anyway, that's my take on it. I feel like this video is long enough. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Subscribe if you want to. Don't if you don't want to. Like or dislike. You know the drill. Other than that, there's an ad at the end of this video. Just kidding. There's no ads in my videos. Well, except what YouTube sticks on them. Sorry for that, but not my choice. I don't even use the AdSense or whatever when there's no generated revenue. It's just for fun. Thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and that is it for me. So this is Caticus out.